And I think when trigger moments come up of things that do bring out or bring up something for us, that do make us either afraid or frustrated, or go back to that place of victim, or go back to that place of helpless child who just wants some nurturing and some care, when those moments do come up in a triggered action or situation, we have the chance to make a new habit and choose a new action, think a new thought, and create a different path. Because that's where we break cycles. Friend, here's something I don't know if you know. While the podcast is a thought of mine for a long time, thinking of me absolutely could not be doing this without our very own Wizard of Oz, Kyle, at Goodnight Podcasting Solutions. Kyle's turnaround time, dedication and level of service means that I never have to second guess or worry about the level of support in getting our messaging out to you. If you're curious as to starting your own podcast, or just want to see how it might spread your message, reach out to Kyle at kylegoodnight.com or check our show notes. I mean it when I say that we couldn't be doing this without him. Hello. Happy Thoughtful Tuesday. Welcome to another episode of Lauren's Thoughts on the Thinking of Me podcast, where this week we actually have a little bit of shadow work to chat about, which is not something I have done much on here. And I thought this week it would be good for two reasons. One is, as time goes on and as Thinking of Me continues to deepen, one thing I've noticed is how little even close friends know of some of my story, and I thought it might be helpful to friends listening to maybe hear some of it if there's some gaps that you're not aware of. And the second reason is a little bit selfish in the sense that I've been picking up a lot of new awarenesses, and I think it might be helpful to share some of those back in real time. And before I dive into all of that, there's one quick thank you to say, and that is to one of our sponsors, Achievable Fitness 365, where this week the 6-week challenge has just finished. And though at time of recording it hasn't been announced yet, and I'm no way close to being one of the winners, it's just in having the drive and having the team and a bit of the focus, which has been and is great. And I love when there is little challenges like this that happen. So a very quick thanks to Jay always for showing new habits to build back to me, and they're fitness related and so much more as well. So just a very quick mention there, as we say we dive in. Now this episode is being recorded at the moment in my bedroom, and we chatted about that here a couple of weeks ago in all things home and childhood, and leaving your house and escaping out of some safety nets and things like that. And that's where some of today is centered in. I suppose I ask you the question, friend, what does mother mean to you? Without getting into the concept of the mother cloud, I chatted about that with our season 1 close Q&A with Cleana when she took over and hosted and kind of quizzed me on it a little bit. The mother cloud is my big project, the Thinking of Me's main project that isn't released in, is set to be released in 2025, where what is your biggest cloud? Or what is your most consistent thought? And is it in the way of your vision of what you can see for yourself and your future? And how has it maybe nurtured or blocked your growth? And I do mean both. So I said I'd share a small bit of some of my story. And the thing with stories is there's one person's experience, another person's experience, and then the truth. And I can only ever share and tell my story. And in playing with the pen to find an outlet to put the emotions of context that will be happening is where this all began and comes back to all the time. So in the out loud on the podcast, a little bit of shadow work, a little bit of story work today on that I am a 29-year-old adult child of an alcoholic, and throughout my childhood would have seen and been in a lot of various situations that would have had physical and emotional and verbal abuse in some way, shape or form. And I'm not going to spend this episode in talking about or telling any of those stories with any family member or friend or neighbour involved or as characters, because that's what you come to learn, is the characters of people and the human experience. When I was little, you'd always hear the stories of people I never met, granaunts, granduncles, neighbours that would have died like 50 years previous, and their names and those same stories come out of me and are said in the house here as quick as if it happened yesterday. So when you have a character in mind of what those people look like that you don't know and you've never met, you can visualize it, you can see it. And when you're creating a future and the focus of thinking of me is forward, and when you're designing and creating a life, you want to keep that focus on the vision and on the next step. So that's why I'm not going to emphasize past stories, because they don't need to be told. And those experiences have happened, and I even today got to say thank you for some of the characters being who they are and as they are, to help me become the woman that I am becoming. Because for a little moment I had one of those inner child experiences of kind of going, oh, why is this happening? I shouldn't have to do X, Y, or Z. And if, friend, you have any familiarity with the concept of being an adult child, you know, of someone who has grown up in an experience of any of the isms or the addictions or anything along those lines, there's a couple of different communities out there where it has had an effect on your development. The personal development, the self-education industry that this is and this is part of, helps find new layers of you. And I'm really grateful that even as some challenges, and they are challenges, and opportunities of growth, I try to reframe that to that, happen in being home experience presently. I'm grateful to be able to continue talking to you here on the podcast, to meet clients and meet a client today, in doing some of that identity work, in reflecting and holding mirrors to my own behaviours, and being able to ask the question of, well, why is this in alignment with me right now? And we actually had a lovely chat about that today in a session where, who do I need to be to attract the thing I want to become? And Tony Robbins talks about that. You know, it's not what happens to you, it's what happens for you. And my biggest one all the time is coming back to, I'm not a manager of circumstance, I'm a creator of my extraordinary life. And I think when trigger moments come up of things that do bring out or bring up something for us, that do make us either afraid or frustrated or go back to that place of victim or go back to that place of helpless child who just wants some nurturing and some care, when those moments do come up in a triggered action or situation, we have the chance to make a new habit and choose a new action, think a new thought, and create a different path. Because that's where we break cycles. And I love my family. I don't think I'd have done all this inner work if I didn't. And there was a moment when I was 20, I want to say, maybe I was 21, where I was upset. And there had been an event happen that had happened multiple times. And by event, I mean a situation where someone's health was massively at risk because of their own action and their own behaviour as an adult. And I was upset about it. And the one person where I always thought I could turn and go to and talk about that situation kind of said, I can't do anything for you. And in that moment was when I went inward. I went to a place of helpless, and took me a while to come out again. And I mention that story because, friend, if you're listening and maybe it seems like you don't know where to put you, and you don't know where's safe, or you don't know where you can celebrate, or you don't know how to plan your next step, it starts with the inner work, and it starts with feeling the emotion, even when it's tough, because then we can begin to see what's real and what's not. And the next step of after that happened, and I was in a position of being forced to find a new way, because my old way wasn't there for me anymore, because they couldn't keep supporting it. I got to find deeper, more real, more authentic layers of myself as I cleared away the dirt or passed away the clouds or got rid of the ugly, as I call it sometimes. It has to come out. It has to not be hidden away. And when that comes up, that comes out, that gets felt, that shadow work happens, which is a tough game to begin and to work on and work with. You do get opportunities to be better for yourself and be better for your family. So that's what I mean when I say I love my family. And I was only ever someone born into my mom, my dad, my community, my grandparents, my entire family, and then got my sister. We don't ask for wealth. We don't ask for scarcity. We don't ask for the geography. We don't ask for anything that is given to us in what we're born into. But we do have a choice and a responsibility to become something and someone that can give back. And I'll start to wrap on this reflection of, sometimes for me, that means shutting up and not doing anything. So with that, that's a little bit of shadow work thoughts, a little bit of reflection of, as I say, where things are at currently. If that sparks something for you, I share in the hope that wherever you're at on the journey, everyone's life is either an example or a warning. And if you got maybe a bit of both from me there today, I try to be as honest as I can without saying anything that will implicate anybody else in any way, shape or form. As you know, friends, my granny and my grandparents, they are elderly, and it is lovely to be able to spend that time. As I say, it's opportunities for growth in choosing some new ways with some things as well. But whoever you are, wherever you are, and whatever is happening, there is always a chance to do something different. And if that takes the shadow work, if that takes the moment of feeling like something's breaking, as we saw at our Women Who Thrive Summit, sometimes that breaking means breaking open to create. It doesn't mean breaking down. And I always use the analogy that once upon a time, 7 years ago, I took the sledgehammer and started uprooting all the bricks I was standing on, or at least that's what it felt like. I was shattering all my foundations. And I see so clearly now that that was to build a path, not 4 sturdy walls, not something just to keep me safe and enclosed. It was to build a path for me and for others also who need it. And that begins with me, begins with my own house, begins with my family, extends to you, my friend, listening, and hopefully extends as a legacy afterwards. So that's the Thinking of Me mission message and where we're at today. And let's keep it in the day. I'll leave it there, my friend. There's some exciting updates coming. I did promise an announcement. Thinking of Me is going live in person for the first time in Mullingar on the 29th of March, which I am pinching myself that it is actually going to happen. And we have our speakers who are already saying yes to coming. So if you want more details of that, do check out our show notes. It is in person, as I say. And if you in any way are local or can be local or want to support in some way, shape or form, I would genuinely be so grateful to anyone and everyone who wants to hear more of our message and the messages we get to bring you from our guest speakers. This week coming up, we also have Audrey, who's going to share about baby love, about some Tony Robbins events and her experience coaching as a mom. And I asked your friend to reflect on what mother maybe means to you. If you're a woman listening, sometimes we have to be our own mothers so we can mother someone else. And by the someone else, that's who's coming behind us. There's also a difference between mother and smother, but that's a whole other day's conversation. So I'll leave it there, friend, and thanks for listening. Talk next Tuesday, and if you want to check out our show notes for our upcoming in-person event, really excited to share the details with you. I hope you have a good week.